Your documentary, The National Parks, America's Best Idea, is really a historical narrative told through the stories of people that were dedicated to preserving these really incredible, majestic places. After you filmed in 53 of the 58 parks, what were some of the experiences that moved you and the stories that affected you?
I can't remember a day working on this project. It's been 10 years when I wasn't blown away by something. Sometimes it's in the editing room and you learn a new fact that you get to work in. Sometimes it was out filming in extraordinary conditions, sort of broiling in Death Valley or freezing in Yellowstone in the wintertime. But the privilege of being close to this idea. This is an idea, after all. Too often when we talk about our national parks, it's a travelogue, it's a nature film, it's what lodge to stay at. We forget to celebrate that this is a uniquely American idea, that this is the Declaration of Independence applied to the landscape, that for the first time in human history, land was set aside not for kings or noblemen or the very rich, but for everybody and for all time. We invented it. Most Americans, most people see a river and think dam, see a stand of trees and think board feet, see a canyon and wonder what mineral wealth is below. But a few people said, no, we need to save and preserve these. And later this evolved into a kind of patriotic thing, an educational thing, a conservation thing, and only later has it become environmental. Now, our film begins in 1851 when the first white people come in to dispossess the Indians in this beautiful valley in the Sierras, to basically the 1980s and 90s as the Alaska lands are divided up, as we begin to understand how important species diversification and the restoration of some of those species that were particularly predators that were eradicated from these places were reintroduced. And people say, well, what about the current issues that we're arguing about, snowmobiles in Yellowstone and global warming and all? That's all there in the earlier stories. When the first automobile comes in, John Muir is torn. He knows this will build new constituents for the parks, that it will democratize them. But at the same time, he knows that they're going to mingle, as he said, the gas breath with the cool air of the pines and the waterfalls. Robert Sterling Yard was a publicist hired by Stephen Mather, the first director of the National Park Service, himself a charismatic figure, to help promote the parks. And he loved the sheer democracy of them, both Mather and Yard. And Yard has this wonderful thing that when you go to a park, you meet somebody from Massachusetts who's a railroad conductor, you meet a shopkeeper from Oregon, and he said, and here they're all American, that the divisions, the class divisions that we'd like to think we don't have, which we do have, disappear in the parks. Whether you're a millionaire or whether you're struggling just to get by, when you're in the park, it's yours. You're a co-owner of some of the most spectacular things on earth. And what happens is the Yard begins to realize that this attempt to democratize the park is also threatening it. That if you have people coming, if you're making these parks wholly about automobiles and catering to that, aren't you losing this sense that these parks are a glimpse of the primeval? Aren't you forgetting that what we're trying to save is this Garden of Eden, this pristine, untouched, unsullied nature? And so he splits with Mather, and he helps to form, with Aldo Leopold and Bob Marshall and other like-minded people, the Wilderness Society, which is saying, these parks are great, but they're now being overrun by people. Ought we not save places that don't have roads, that don't cater to the automobile, that don't have visitor centers, that don't have parking lots? Can we not save a few places in which we as human beings can enter into nature as the first human beings did, as part of it and not just the masters of it? And I think at the heart of our film was this surprise. We hadn't realized the full extent of John Muir's rapture. We hadn't realized that the people we were going to interview to tell us the story of John Muir and everyone else's rapture had themselves these transformational experiences. And we want so desperately to shout from every Middlesex village and farm that we ourselves as filmmakers, doing vast subjects over the last 30 years of making films, also had those transformational experiences, which we promise everyone within the sound of my voice can have, will have, if they just get out.